This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this is Saving the Last Dance, our final post wrap-up of the docuseries The Last Dance. It didn't end off with the bang.
That's one way to say it.
Alongside of me is my co-host, my partner in crime, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Mr. Shaw, how are things so far, sir?
I'm doing great, Bryon. You know what it is? Just end of a 5-week run where NBA Twitter was really kind of as one. I don't think I've gotten as much engagement in my tweets, over a 5-week span, ever, not even during like NBA playoffs, things of that nature, just the entire basketball family, but really the entire sports world. Anything that has to do with this culture was engaged over the last 5 weeks. ESPN boasting some really lofty ratings over the course of the Last Dance 5-week run. So sad to see it go, but as you alluded to, didn't end as strong as I think either one of us would have loved, but still a great ride altogether.
It was a very well put together documentary or docuseries. And I think for people who I think have taken for granted some of our superstar athletes, specifically those in the NBA, this was a great series that I hope once the NBA resumes post this pandemic, that we take a much closer look at all of the different nuances that allow us the privilege of being able to be exposed to the superstar athlete. So when we see a guy like LeBron James, we see a Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook or James Harden or Steph Curry, we understand the dynamics. We understand that there's part personality and there's also part game. And you have to also take into consideration that we don't see everything. And unless the players, the NBA, and really the world in which they're playing in, the climate they're playing in, all seem to be working in its favor to allow us that access, we can't just assume that what we see from these guys on television, even if it is sports entertainment, is an actual depiction of what we think that person is, whether it's what they're doing on the court or even what they're doing off the court. And I understand we have to take these things at face value, but I feel like if we can do this for a person like Michael Jordan after the Jordan mystique, right? Like he's beyond what he'll always be MJ. He'll always be Michael Jordan. But even at this stage, to still be able to look at him, break him down, take the good, the bad, and everything like that, we know that we can do that eventually for all players. So it isn't like what we see from Kevin Durant means that it will be Kevin Durant for the rest of his days. He will evolve. You can only hope that he doesn't devolve, right? So that to me is what I've taken, specifically from this series, which I think came in a really, really good time. I feel like it's hitting a pause button for a moment and having us to kind of regather ourselves about what really matters when we're watching these guys out there day in, day out playing, and then also what they're giving us, the fans, as far as from an entertainment value perspective, and how we should look at them as whether or not they'll be role models or things moving forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think you're kind of summarizing it in a synopsis, and to some degree. I think there's one part of this that will stick out for me, very poignantly, and obviously, we got to get into 9 and 10 specifically, but just in general, Mike's almost not necessarily remorse, but he realized how he could have been perceived as a leader, and how he pushed teammates and things of that nature, and what you discussed right there in terms of like all the people that we see in sports, they're all humans first, and they all have an internal drive about them or something that makes them unique and different. And they are who they are in the moments that they need to be, kind of that person, if that even makes sense to some degree. It's like they all have to take on different personas of themselves and have the different layers of their personality come out at different points, depending on what is needed by them, what's needed by their team, and vice versa. So I think this is something that we'll always remember. because, it was slated to come out later in the summer, but Corona called and demanded for something to kind of keep us distracted. And shouts to Jason Hare and the ESPN and all the people who put this together to give us this 5-week ride. That was pretty fun overall.
So we're going to go ahead and do our quick little plug and then jump right into episodes 9 and 10. But as always, we host the Baseline NBA podcast, weekly podcast that discusses the hot button topics of the NBA. As always, you can get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. And this is an awesome experiment, and it was an awesome experience because I know for a lot of our listeners, they're like, can we put the name with the face? And we're not, we're a little bit more than just a bunch of characters that you always see being plastered on our social media platforms. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Obviously, episode 9 rolls us right into the Eastern Conference Finals between the Chicago Bulls and the Indiana Pacers. It's amazing to me. I never really thought of it in this context properly because I think I'm so used to saying that the Bulls were such a dominant basketball team. But if you really look at that roster that Larry Bird had in those Indiana Pacers, I don't know, man. Like, it's weird to me. We probably are not giving the Pacers enough credit about just how formidable they really, really were. You look at that lineup, man. It's a bold freaking lineup. Jalen Rose, Reggie Miller, the Davis brothers, Mark Jackson, Chris Mullen. I mean, they basically had every single component that you could possibly ask for in a team that could probably push the Bulls better than any of the other teams out of the Western Conference. I get that the Utah Jazz were a better version of themselves in 97, but I look at that Rick Smits, I look at that Pacers team, I'm like, holy you know what I'm saying? Like, these dudes, they should have won it. And even Reggie Miller said it himself. He's like, I firmly believe that we were the better team, but you need championship DNA, and that just can't be replicated. And I think he made such a profound point about that. He's like, one turn of the tide in that series changed the whole complexity, changed the demeanor about whether or not we truly believed that we were going to win that game. It was all within a 5 to 6 minute stretch of that game that completely changed the dynamic. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what you tell me. There's so few players in the game of basketball that know when they have that in them, when they feel confident, no matter what the circumstances are, they still feel like they're going to be victorious. And that's exactly what Reggie Miller was afraid of in that tip-off scenario once the Bulls controlled the basketball, when they thought that they could have controlled the whole series and the game in that span.
Well, I think there's a lot of great points and layers to that. I mean, if you go back to Reggie, even just saying, in his rookie year, and he gave MJ the business in his first half, and then Jordan walks by him, with that smug, that snide look over his shoulder, and don't ever talk trash to Black Jesus. Like, and from there, Reggie put respect on Jordan's name after that by never calling him Jordan, by calling him Black Jesus or that Black Cat.
I mean, I didn't even know Jordan was like Dolomite in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he resurrected blaxploitation. You know what I'm saying? Putting it on all the brothers, putting it on all the dark-skinned brothers. He's in the light-skinned brothers. He's like, the light-skinned brothers can get it too. They can get the smoke. He was putting smoke before there was smoke.
He was so cognizant of his space. He was present, in that time. A lot of people just kind of played their careers, and I guess he kind of had to be with all the fame and fortune that kind of surrounded him at all times. But he knew at the crux of it that he needed to be as great as he possibly could at all times, and always looked for that fuel. Just another point to that. And then just fast forwarding, to the point where Reggie and the Pacers had kind of earned their stripes. Larry Bird's rookie year as a coach, getting them to the Eastern Conference Finals, and feeling very, very confident that they could have gotten this done. And yeah, the Bulls only played 2 Game 7s in their entire 6 championship runs, and none of them were in the NBA Finals, to be quite frank. So the Pacers being able to do what they did, and as you alluded to, that jump ball, I think with the Pacers up 3 and they, could have pushed it to 5, they win that tip. Kerr hits the 3, ties the game, and then the Bulls end up closing it out. It's just like they were that close. And it just goes to show you at all times, like the NBA is such a game of emotion and runs. And something that small is something that they all call back to and remember as a turning point in that series or in that game, actually in Game 7. The Pacers about to win on Chicago's home floor. That's freaking crazy that they had the gumption even to be in it in that way. But you alluded to, they had a murderer's row, man. Those guys were physical. Like I said, those Davis twins, Dale and Antonio, Chris Mullen, I think that was probably the rookie or second year, Jalen Rose, on that team. Obviously, Reg. That was a squad, bro. That was a squad, and the Bulls were lucky to escape and get that done. And I love that moment with he and Larry Bird at the end of it. Bird being an ultimate competitor, wasn't even crying or anything of that nature, and obviously he was in the coach's role. But Jordan just going up to him and say, "You bitch, F you," because they made it hard on him. But Jordan appreciated the competition and what the Pacers were able to bring to them in that series.
Every time I see these recaps of the series, I think to myself, I'm like, will people look at this Bulls team? Will they look at this dynasty and try and chip away at that armor that has made them so unbridled, unbreakable? You know what I mean? And now when I think about it, I say to myself, I'm like, they can recap this 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I think now all this is doing is reinforcing really how tough it was for the Chicago Bulls. Not just for themselves, but how it also kind of it allows people to be able to say, you know what, the Bulls were just not so outright dominant. They had to be dominant. Yeah. They had to play at such a level because when you look at the teams that were composed at that time frame, you cannot sit here and make these comparisons that people just wildly throw out there saying, "Oh, the Chicago Bulls wouldn't be able to run with the Golden State Warriors or the Miami Heats." And no. This wasn't about running. The Bulls are not going to let you score 110 points. Look at the guys that were composed on that team. If they felt like they needed to score 100 points, they will. But they will first say, we are going to hold you to 75 if you are a team that's scoring 95 points per game, right? Which at that point is in the equivalence of like 105 in today's modern NBA. I mean, the emphasis was them imposing their will on you. And I just challenge people day in and we've had this conversation on numerous podcasts when we do overviews and analysis on teams and where their statuses are during certain points in the NBA season. I mean, we're doing that just with the Milwaukee Bucks on whether or not we really believe that they could be possible contenders if it was the Clippers or the Lakers coming out of the West. Do they have it in them to be who they want to be against a team that people perceive to be more talented than them? And this is why I say, don't just give it to whoever's coming out of the West just yet. There is a DNA in players like Giannis Antetokounmpo that we have yet to see blossom because we're so wanting it because we've now seen it in a Michael Jordan, right? And we want it again over and over and over. And that's the thing that I think was really highlighted in this. It's like we wanted that for the Indiana Pacers. Like we wanted that for Reggie Miller doing the choke over at Spike Lee. He never had it in him to be like this super obsessed albatross of a figure like Michael Jordan was. And even when he had the opportunities, Michael Jordan just consumed the room. You know what I mean? And so that's exactly what this reflected on, is that no matter what people may think, Jordan walked off knowing that he was going to be the man. And that you cannot take it away from him. That's why he's always in the conversation of being the greatest player to ever play the game.
So one of the things, too, that was highlighted in that conference finals that I think was pretty poignant, and they touched on it and narrowed it and kind of wove it back in kind of on the back end, but his relationship with security guard Gus Lett, and after them winning Game 7, giving him the game ball, Gus was a father figure to Mike, talked to him about Mike's dad even passing. And then Gus came down with cancer, and Jordan felt that, the entire Bulls organization felt that, and it just goes to show you there was parts of this docuseries I think was really great where you see the behind the scenes with security guards. There's a great segment in this that we're not going to get too much into, but even with the PR guy, in the situation with Rodman, all the people that were around those Bulls teams, they all had a role to play. And they all had to be, in essence, the Michael Jordan of their role. And, well, I understand not everybody could be Michael Jordan, but you need to be the best that you could be at whatever your role actually was. And I think that's something that permeates kind of throughout. Before we get too far down the line, though, and I obviously want to get your comments on Gus as well, too, I think we should maybe even go back 1 year to the 97 series, with Utah, because obviously after that conference finals, they go play Utah for a second time. But that first matchup against Utah, and the year Malone wins the MVP. Jordan, I love the fact that Jordan says, it's not that I don't think he was deserving, but it was another reason to give me some motivation. It was something else to kind of piss me off, to kind of say, all right, here's what my feel is going to be for that series.
I just think it's crazy, right? Like, if there's anyone who can manufacture motivation.
Yeah, man.
I mean, if there's someone that you want to write a book about what happens when you can just make up motivation, right?
It should be called like the fabricator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, Michael's expertise should be fabricating the motivation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, he's like Fab Five. I think it was 5 instances in which he believed that if there's any reason to be motivated to do something, and I feel bad for Karl Malone, right? Because I'm sure in Karl Malone's head, he's like, man, I just want to get to the finals. Yeah. I had no idea that it had to be me pissing off Michael Jordan for me doing my job.
But not even saying anything about Mike. He didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything.
It was the media who was just tired of voting for Jordan in essence. And again, the year Malone won it, the year, Charles won, all that stuff. Like, we can always say Jordan could have won the MVP every single year, but there's media fatigue. And there just was that with him and the MVPs. There was with that in the Bulls and ultimately their sixth championship. Just like there was this more recently with the Golden State Warriors. Like, you just get tired of seeing the same thing from a media standpoint, and then you just don't want to continue to reward greatness, no matter how great it actually is. But that 97 series was real interesting, and and I know you're chomping at the bit. I want to get you in here, but the BS again. Jordan carried for 2 years with Bryon Russell. Bryon Russell, a pimple-faced rook, I guess the same thing. It's like, oh, man, I could have guarded you. And Jordan's, you could see even now his competitiveness, like, Karl, you better talk to him. You better let him know. Jordan was out here, missing curveballs at the time.
Bryon Russell carved his tombstone out before.
2 years early.
He carved out his tombstone before he even, got buried. And I don't know. And I guess to me, like, when I first thought about it, like when I first saw what happened, right, I really felt bad for Bryon Russell because, he was really scarred. Yeah. It's difficult to be a guy like him because he never possessed, all-star capabilities. He really was one of those guys where if he was a good defensive player, you felt like the best that he could ever be was one of the better defensive players in the game. You never say, oh, he'd be a great two-way player. And I don't know whether or not he could have ever been a great two-way player under Jerry Sloan.
Yeah,
but I will say, though, that the guy was a heck of a defender. You know what I'm saying? And I just think it is such a task to ask a guy like him, who is not being given that opportunity to do it every single time, to say, oh, okay, we'll guard the greatest player in the game of basketball. Oh, and by the way, there's hidden motivation that he heard you say some ish to him, like back in your rookie season, and had no idea that he was carrying that, all the way into, an NBA. Like, you really would think to yourself, like, there's got to be something else motivating Michael Jordan for him to do what it was that he was supposed to be doing to help that team win that 5th championship. And all the while, part of that was, I want him to guard me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because I am going to kill this kid's career, which effectively is what Michael Jordan did, which is just, again, I know people are hearing this and it's making it sound petty. I'm saying this to say, this is exactly what you want your best player to do. if he is not going to find motivation in helping you win a 5th championship in 7 years, okay? If he's not going to help you, then he will find whatever it is internally to get himself prepared to do damage to what a lot of people felt like was the turning of is the coming of age for the Western Conference. There finally is a Western Conference team that looked like, smelled like they should be able to at least hang with the Chicago Bulls. You know what I'm saying? Because you had no confidence in anyone coming out of the West was going to be able to beat Chicago at that time.
Yeah, and Utah, they were obviously a good team. They won and got to the finals on that John Stockton shot.
They beat the Rockets.
Yeah,
exactly.
The Rockets were the 2-time champs, et cetera, et cetera. Previous to that, obviously. So, it's really interesting, though, how that first series played out. In that series, that's when the infamous food poisoning game takes place. Lots of questions there. A lot of people are still skeptical. Was Jordan really hungover? And that's the story he and his team are going to tell. Did it take 5 guys in the city of Utah, or Salt Lake rather, to deliver one pizza? If so, why do they actually use Michael Jordan's name as the pizza? Why wouldn't Tim Grover or somebody else be, deliver a pizza for Tim in room whatever? There's a lot of interesting nuances and things you could maybe, raise your brow to.
I'm sure it'll be on Dateline.
When it comes to that. But nevertheless, Jordan was spent, in that game 5. And it is iconic watching Pippen holding him up. His body language was like a drunken fighter. He was staggered, and just every time out, hunched over just with a towel, trying to consume fluids to try to get his wind. And I think that's a game that I'll always remember, because even at that time, as a teen, I bought into it. Whatever it was, I bought into it. It's like, oh, Mike has the flu. Holy hell, what's he going to do? How's he going to get over it? And just watching him drop 38 in 44 minutes, today that probably doesn't happen. I mean, it was the final, so maybe, but, most coaches are going to be like, all right, well, we'll play you 32 minutes instead of, your customary with 37, 38. Jordan played 44 friggin' minutes that day and dropped 38 points on Utah.
Yeah. Just, totally remarkable. All right. So let's go ahead and, fast forward to obviously, episode 10, which highlights, the final series that the Bulls are going to play now that they've gotten past the Indiana Pacers. They play the Utah Jazz, as the reigning 2-time champions. And this is obviously the second go round for the Utah Jazz to see if they can dethrone the Chicago Bulls. And, look, man, this team was spent. Okay. This team was spent emotionally. This team was spent physically. I looked up on basketballreference.com, and this is, to me, I guess, highlights again something that I just don't think people are unfairly trying to create this narrative of why you cannot give Michael Jordan his just due. If you're going to make comparisons to him and LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, let's put this in perspective, Shaw. In the 98 finals, just the finals, 6 games played, 6 games equals 288 minutes. Michael Jordan played 250 of the 288 minutes in that series. Scottie Pippen was close behind him at 250, I believe. Okay. I'm sorry, not 250. I think something to that. It's just a ridiculous amount of minutes that Michael Jordan played in order to get this team to win a championship. Okay. And I just feel like it's so disingenuous when you tell people, look at what this person did in this many minutes and this, that, and the third. That's not what that was about. Michael Jordan said, I am going to be on that floor for however long is necessary to get us to win a championship. And those numbers bore it out. He averaged 33.5 points per game in that series. And just by far played the most minutes than anyone out there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if anyone used the word load management on Michael Jordan, he'd have probably pimp slapped him from here, to next Tuesday. And I just feel like that to me should embody the last dance, because it meant he was going to be the last person on that floor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When it's all said and done, he is getting the last. He's going to have the last waltz. He's going to do the last samba. He's, you know what I'm saying? He's doing the last flamenco. No one else. And that to me just attributes really a remarkable mindset that Michael Jordan has always had, and it's been consistent. It's never been wavering. It's never been questioned. Now it's just been highlighted.
Yeah, just the way he was able to pull and push through the fatigue throughout the course of his career, really, not just that series, but all series. And, you know, the physicality that he had to endure, consistently seeing double, sometimes triple teams, and everybody always wanted to rough him up and knock him off the block and knock him off his game, knock him out the air. That takes just an incredible amount of will and skill, but just the mental fortitude to continue to push through and try to make sure that your team can rely on you. And sure, you saw throughout that series, I remember even back then, you could see where his shots were short. You know, his legs were given. Bob Costas on the call, even, you know, from you know, announcing the finals, it says it, oh, he's short again. And that was just fatigue. You know, they were able to wear him down, you know, especially in that final game 6 of that second finals with the Utah Jazz. But it started with Utah really feeling good about themselves that year specifically. You know, early in the documentary, they alluded to the fact that the Bulls did not beat Utah in the regular season that year. Utah won both games and felt really good about their chances coming into the finals for the second straight year against them. You know, and just seeing what and actually having to go to Utah, you know, to start the series, et cetera, and having to even overcome the circus, the absolute debacle of Dennis Rodman leaving in the middle of the NBA Finals to go.
I feel like doing some. I feel like.
I mean, it's amazing. This dude left the NBA Finals.
I feel like I should appreciate the Attitude Era so much more because of Dennis Rodman.
NWO, and it's funny because I admire Dennis in one aspect, because he was a part of the Pistons, you know, 2-time champions, part now of the Bulls, 3-time champions, and part of the NWO rather in the WCW, which was an absolute movement in wrestling at that time. Like, I mean, it was the embodiment. It captured the world's attention, and they stole Hulk Hogan from the WWF at the time, not even the WWE. And just, it was amazing. But the fact he did it when he did it is so NWO in some ways, is that they don't give a crap about the NBA Finals or what's going on. We're going to have a special guest coming in here, and Rodzilla makes an appearance right after a Game 3 rout of the Utah Jazz. Just, oh my God, that's an amazing stuff.
Which that is just, you know, straight up blasphemous, right? Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be all Stephen A. like, but I mean that to me is just like, when you think about that epitomizes exactly what you don't want, like, your kids to exhibit or show. Like, you know, when I was growing up, you know, getting ready for state championships or invitational meets and things of that nature, you're on a curfew, man. Like, you know, you're talking about trying to win something significant, important, and a championship is important. And I guess, like, you know, I don't want to go off on you know, off the rails with where we are with this, but it's just an interesting point that you make, Shaw, because Dennis Rodman is already an NBA champion. He was already a 2-time NBA champion before he was with the Bulls. He comes with the Bulls, and he basically changes a little bit of what the Bulls had already been previous to. Like, the Bulls were like this classy, real shiny doll that, you know, just know how to win. You know, you can't phase them. And then they're like, all of a sudden, you get like this motley crew dude in here. It's like anyone who plays for the New York Yankees. They have the real scruffy beard, and then the next thing you know, you put them in a Yankees uniform, and they clean shaven and supposed to be acting a certain way. Yeah. Not Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman had all kinds of crazy going on. Didn't phase the Bulls, right? But it's remarkable how Rodman even admitted to the fact, he's like, he knew what he was doing, but he knew that the only person that he needed the stamp of approval from was Phil Jackson. Not even Michael Jordan. He just needed Phil Jackson's stamp of approval. And again, this lends to how much credit you have to give the head coach for knowing his team, knowing his personnel, and knowing how to, rein it in if it's going to afflict the rest of the guys from going out there to basically do what they were tasked to do, which is win another championship.
So, one thing I'll say about this is, he came back and had an amazing game. He came back and rebounded the hell out of the ball. So he's just one of those guys who didn't phase. Like, he didn't necessarily need to be locked in off the court, because he could come back in here now and kind of turn it on. And, that's not something that today's athlete has a lot of gumption.
Rodman reminds me of, like, early. And I don't mean this in game work ethic or anything. Like, he reminded me a lot of like Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace is just one of those guys, man, where he looked like he just wants to get taken out of the game. But when his focus was on his team and going out there to play the game of basketball, you could not tell him otherwise.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing, even though everybody else, they thought he was maniacal and was a madman.
So as you fast forward later into the series and, go into that iconic and what everybody considers what should have been Mike's true last game, game 6, really forgot, in this moment. It's one of those things in the back of the recesses of my mind, that Pippen missed a good portion of that game, with back issues, spasms or whatever it was, and leaving every 5 minutes to get massages and wincing. And again, he looked really, really legitimately decrepit out there for large, significant portions of the time, but gutted out. It just kind of brought to light how many issues Pippen had with injuries in key moments, and whether, real or fabricated, and I think in this instance it was real, but there was always some issue, I think, that kind of came about, but nonetheless, still one of the greatest Robins to ever do it in the game. But Mike having to carry the load yet again, and with all the championships and the help he received, John Paxson's, the Steve Kerrs of the world hitting big shots, game 6 was Mike, right? You always remember that. And yeah, he won every single finals MVP, but a lot of the championships are capped by other people's greatness or him trusting other people to get it done. In this moment, which really kind of encapsulated his career, and we all know the portrait shot, kind of the light push of Bryon Russell, into oblivion.
More an excuse. I loved how Costas,
a maitre d'.
He was like, is this like a maitre d' escorting him into his table? That's all he was doing.
Guiding him to L City. He leaves it up there with the gooseneck, and nails a jumper with 5 seconds left, to give the Bulls, the go-ahead lead and ultimately the championship. And that was very poignant.
One last thing that I really thought that was I found to be memorable was Steve Kerr's depiction of Michael Jordan, in that they never talked about each other's fathers. Both of them, ironically, have fathers who were murdered, not in the same circumstance, but under that premise, there clearly was a hidden kinship between them. Something that I think Steve Kerr really, 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 embraced. And as tempered, as mild-mannered as he always has been, I think his most loud, side of his personality, I think really came through when they had that confrontation at practice. And it's ascended. And it's funny, Shaw, because now when you look at Steve Kerr, it's just really ironic. John Paxson was his mentor.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? John Paxson is his mentor. And look how dynamically different their post-NBA careers have been. Because if you were to ask me, who would I want managing an NBA team moving forward, I would have told you, if you had showed me what Paxson meant to the Bulls and what he had done prior to what we've seen over the last few years as him being a general manager, I would have said, yeah, I would love to see John Paxson as a general manager. I would love to see him, mentoring other guys. And I don't know what changed. I don't know what happened. But clearly, Steve Kerr's experiences have boded well for him. and the time that he spent with Greg Popovich has boded well for him. Because even when he had the short stint with the Phoenix Suns, he wasn't a bad general manager. He was pretty good, right? And then he comes out, he's the head coach, and he helps the Golden State Warriors get over the hump. It's just remarkable the temperament certain people gain, even in the post years after this situation, because it surprises me when I think about Steve Kerr and what he's been able to do for the NBA since this time. And it's just remarkable where he started to where he's gotten himself to be. And I attribute the idea that this movie, even though this was about the Bulls, it was about Jordan.
Yeah.
Knowing more about Kerr makes me respect him a little bit more than just saying he was riding the coattails of Mark Jackson.
Well, I think that's a great point for Kerr and some of the other, how you want to say it, role players for the Bulls. They had to earn their stripes. And I think Kerr has earned his stripes and then some, and ultimately definitely made his father, his family proud in what he was able to accomplish in life. As a high school kid who wasn't heavily recruited, said the girls weren't checking for him and none of that, ultimately scrapped his way to the NBA out of Arizona, and then ultimately finished, a career, with 6 NBA championships as a player. And then now, has 3 more as a Golden State Warriors head coach. Like, that's craziness, really to think about how far he has come. But I think that level of respect, and it was even put on Twitter in some degree, Jordan, we don't know all the behind the scenes stuff here, right? But Jordan in some ways has some level of authority over the way this story was told. And for them, and for him to, you want to say, kind of bless the Kerr side of this, the Kerr segment to be told, I think is testament to how much Kerr gained a respect from Mike ultimately in general. Obviously, Pip had to have something in there. Phil had to have something in there. Dennis even as well too. But Kerr, especially going a little bit deeper into his story that a lot of people would not have known about, especially with his father. I think that was an ultimate sign of respect from Jordan. And their relationship that Jordan probably still feels bad about to this day for punching him in the eye. But at the end of the day, like that ship has sailed. That's water under the bridge now. And those are guys who are now competing on another level with Jordan as an owner, and Kerr as obviously the head coach, over on the West Coast in Golden State. So great stuff there, from that. Want to move forward into now the breakup, as you talk about it. Very interesting stuff there. Jordan looked like he was seeing that clip from Jerry Reinsdorf, not Krause, Reinsdorf for the very first time. And just like, this is bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, we could have came back and tried to win 7. He's like, he doesn't care what anybody has to say.
I was surprised that Jordan was completely restrained, as he was after seeing that clip. And maybe, in part, again, Jordan, the respectability factor. One quick point I want to make about this. Mm-hmm. Throughout this whole series, everybody wants to nitpick at things that, make you not like Michael Jordan. That's fine. You can nitpick at him all you want to. But I will say this much. He had always shown a level of respect and a level of class. And to do the things that he's done that doesn't get talked about, you brought up, him looking after Gus, and Gus was looking after him, especially when he lost his father. When you look at the people that Michael Jordan has surrounded himself by, was always older, more mature people, right? And that didn't stop. You know what I mean? I just find it, again, this is just something that I noticed about, Michael Jordan that I don't think got enough attention, because I think the assumption is, with all of that stardom, a purpose. Could have gone. Your point, Shaw. Maybe there was some editing involved. Maybe there was a little, Jordan, you want to show your real side of this or not show? Doesn't matter. What was displayed for us was a level of maturity, especially now knowing what other people were saying after the fact. and he still shows a level of respect that I think at times gets missed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think ultimately how this thing closes out was a little bit sad, for the team itself. But again, harkening back to Reindorf's conversation with Phil saying, not so much. And then they just basically broke up the team. Phil takes a year or two off, ultimately goes on to coach the Lakers. Jordan retires, unretires, comes back, plays for the Wizards, as co-owner, part owner. Kerr gets traded. I believe that's to the Spurs, I think, in that time. Rodman is released. Pippen gets traded to Portland, and they just break up the band. And they've been in some ways rebuilding ever since. Had a glimmer of hope with Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, all that, but things never actually ultimately panned out. And it's just crazy what the loss of a true franchise type player.
How precious would 4 championships be? 4 championships in a row.
Yeah, I mean,
I wonder.
Absurd.
I don't know whether or not they would have been able to pull it off. I think that the '98 season really showed that that teams were climbing a lot closer to the Chicago Bulls than than what I think people were trying to kind of give credence to of them winning 3 in a row.
The next season was the strike season, if I recall.
Right, and the Spurs wind up beating the Knicks. But I think you can make the argument again. Pacers, Knicks. If we're not saying that this was about the strike, right? That it would have been tough sledding. I don't know how much. Let's put it like this: really would have had to see what kind of magic, what rabbit Jerry Krause pulls out of the magician's hat to allow that team to be able to play and compete. They clearly would not have been able to get away with, their anemic scoring ability at times. Defensively, I think they could be okay, but another year of Harper as their guard, I don't know if that could have played. I don't think they would have been able to control Rodman. They would have probably had to have gone in a different direction. Maybe, really, really focus the attention on elevating Kukoc, but I'm just saying that, you still have to do it, right? If you still got the best player in the game and believes that he said it, he's like, look, if everybody was already on 1 year, if you would tell me we're going to try to do this one more time, I would have stepped up and figured out a way to get Pippen to buy in one extra year. He just knew that they didn't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? And listen, we don't know what conversations Jordan and Jackson really did have amongst each other. I'm sure if Jordan really, really, really wanted to push this, he would have been spearheading it. But I think in his heart of hearts, this wasn't just about Krause being a black cloud over the Bulls. I think it really came down to what's in Jackson's heart. And he probably saw it. He's like, you don't want to be here. You don't want to be here for this. And I don't blame you. You know what I'm saying? Because if there's anyone who probably would have cried about, you know what, you can let me go. You can send me off. It would have been Jordan. But Jordan has always believed that he was the glue for that franchise, for that organization. Yeah. Always believed it.
And that's what makes it sad, right? Phil understanding that and kind of in this super majestic and, really movie-like moment has everybody write what has it meant to them, to be a part of this ride, and burning those letters, those thoughts, after it's read aloud, into a friggin' coffee can or a canister or whatever it was. And just, the flame kind of flickering out on the championship run, in that way. And it's very Phil Jackson, and I think that's very Phil Jackson. To hear that story was not surprising, but I think it fit and it was appropriate, because it's, in a lot of ways, it's bittersweet. Even the fact that we don't have the ability to look back on what they wrote. It was in that moment, around, in the locker room or however, and then burned just like that. And we'll never know exactly what everybody said.
Do you know what and I guess we can end, this part of the segment, as we come to the end of our discussion. The reason why I think in the very beginning we said that this felt like anticlimactic is because I really felt like I was expecting to hear more people provide more perspective. I felt like episodes 7 and 8, and you and I talked about this before we jumped on, really highlighted the most impactful emotional aspects of what I think we were asking for this docuseries to really get into. You know, not just on an individual level, but collectively on a team level that wasn't being addressed in the first 6 episodes, right? So we got that in episode 7 and 8. I'm like, well, damn, that must mean that we really must need to, you know, something's really going to come out in episodes 9 and 10. And I feel like there was so much of a somberness to this thing, you know, swan song, so to speak. And everyone, you know, the Jalen Roses and Reggie Millers are kind of, you know, giving their eulogies, not about their own team, but about what could have been, you know, Larry Birds and those guys. I was more curious about what was David Stern's, you know, thoughts about what was going on. You know, if you were the commissioner and you found out that you had a team that won 3 championships in a row and probably could easily try it for one more time, you don't think that you would try to get in the ear of Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause and be like, hey, man, you know what I'm saying? Let this gravy train run one more time if it could.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Well,
but I would just be curious about what he would have, his thoughts were now knowing what was going on. Because you have to assume that Stern was in some of the know, right? You have to.
What I'd say is that I think this lends itself for a great opportunity potentially, you know, for the B-roll, the deleted scenes. You know, if they release this, as I'm sure they will, to make some money. If they release this as some sort of, you know, DVD, whatever digital package, and it'll be like watching the friggin' Avengers series or Star Wars. It's going to have so many things that didn't make the documentary itself, and you may get some deeper dives into this. And I'm sure they probably have anywhere from 2 to 5 more episodes of footage that they actually could have utilized based on what they just captured and what was all the takes that they were able to get. But they chose, you know, to go the route that they went, and overall still very satisfied in this experience. But we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We realized that the production team wasn't quite ready, you know, and they were now quarantining and trying to finish the post editing of this series to get it out roughly 2-3 months in advance. So I think there's still ways that this could have potentially have gone. There's probably still more notes, as I alluded to, and more stories that can be told. And I'd be very interested to see if Jason wants to release something, you know, for the fans who are still starving for some more Last Dance content.
Final thoughts, Saul? Anything that you probably feel like?
I mean, for sure. I'll say it again. You know, I talked about it, I think, last week. Jordan didn't come off as quite the asshole as I think people, or maybe even he, previous to that, came out to be. So maybe it was one of those, all right, I'm going to build it up to be real bad, and when you see it's not as bad, and, you know, you just kind of like, all right, that wasn't that. Sure, he was a bully in some aspects, but I don't know, and maybe what we were just talking about, maybe there's some of that we didn't get to see. Maybe the true a-hole in him and the true where he was just berating teammates, we didn't get to see in the documentary, and that's stuff that they have in some, you know, backroom footage that is, you know, yet to be released. But I'm not sitting here to watch it to kind of tear the guy down, but I wanted to get more into that because a lot of it is still folklore for me. You know, when it comes to that, like, oh, he was this type of guy, he was ultra competitive, et cetera, et cetera. And there's definitely highlights of that, but I needed to see I wanted to see kind of the devil in him really even more, that really pushed him against some of his teammates and then caused that friction, but ultimately led to 6 championships nonetheless.
Yeah, I think that this series highlighted so many other personality traits that I don't think got enough attention on. But again, this is what happens when you are, you know, the alpha in the room. You know, everybody is focused on you and how you handle things and how you influence everybody else and what they may think of you, right? Like, so this really did become more about Michael Jordan than it really did become about all of the centered pieces that helped allow Michael Jordan to be that person, right? I'm not saying that they are the reason. I'm just saying they enabled. Because had there been anybody questioning all of what Michael Jordan was doing, you know what I'm saying? Then that would have been more drama for that. But the expectation was, hey, we win with this guy. This guy, he forces us to play at a high level. He forces us to be a certain kind of way, you know, and I think that has to be credited because most people who do concede to this in this climate of the NBA, they concede to it and everything is being looked at as being selfish, self-righteous, self-gratification, not about the team. You know, sometimes the simple sacrifices is what puts you and the team in a better position towards what was supposed to be the ultimate goal, which is win an NBA championship.
Yeah.
Everybody did not come into that situation saying, oh, you know, I want to make the Chicago Bulls a respectable. That wasn't Pippen's purpose. You know what I'm saying? Pippen wanted to win, and he wanted to win with the best player by his side. He wanted to be an important reason on why Michael Jordan would be one of the greatest players in the game. You know what I'm saying? Dennis Rodman wanted to be a tribute to that. Phil Jackson wanted to do what he obviously had seen Michael Jordan be so close not to accomplish. He wanted to be that reason. Everyone had their own personal reasons, but the overall goal was to win a championship. The overall meaning, though, behind The Last Dance has always been Jordan's commitment to him saying, I want the city of Chicago. I wanted the Bulls as an organization to be a respect. That's what I found important about the way that they rolled that back, because that was the first thing that you saw at the beginning of this docuseries, and it was one of the final cuts that here had posted showing Michael Jordan in that interview when he got drafted of what he wants to do, what he wants to accomplish as a Chicago Bull. And I think that those bookends, I think, speak in volumes about why The Last Dance is so important, because it wasn't about just the championship. It's about the cost of what you gave up to get that championship.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think my closing sentence, if you will, or statement will rather be, you know, it could have been a little bit more Ron Harper, maybe a little as well too. But
I know I wanted a little bit more FU too, right? You know.
Yeah. And I think in my aspect, the storyline that I kind of saw throughout the documentary or docuseries was the different parts that kind of came in and out. As I alluded to, I think this is like 4 weeks ago now, friends who became foes, foes who became friends. Like that angle, I think they could have maybe did something with that as well too. Horace Grant and, you know, Rodman and obviously Ron Harper, even Steve Kerr, you know, came from Cleveland. All that, like all the people who ultimately played big roles to be role players on that teams that weren't always a part of the original plan. And I think that's, you know, maybe another kind of alleyway they could have went down a little bit as well too. But overall, satisfied with it. I know NBA Twitter is sad. You know, this 5-week run is now complete, and we'll have to figure out what else we're going to do now on our Sundays.
Absolutely. I'm curious of whether or not if they have a Bulls reunion, if Tony Kukoc is going to stand next to Scottie Pippen.
Kukoc is still a little perplexed as to why he got the treatment he did. So I'm going to venture no.
Probably venture no on that. Well, listen, this has been an awesome wrap-up discussion, man. Just remarkable insight on your part. So I bid you kudos on that.
As you as well, sir.
And listen, to all of our listeners, we appreciate you rolling with us, you know, as we break down, you know, definitely one of our important markers in the sand of growing up on the game of basketball. But we definitely want to get your thoughts. So please get at us at NBA Baseline. And as always, man, keep looking out for us. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast. Every single week, man, we always try and give you and discuss the hot button topics of the NBA. Always dropping that content. So once again, for the Baseline, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for rolling with us as we attempt to save The Last Dance. Certainly will not be the last time that you see us on the dance floor, but we hopefully will get a number in for you guys very soon. Until then, catch up with you next time.